Good morning, everyone. I'm Emily Akhtarzandi, Managing Director of AtlanticLIVE, and it's wonderful to see an amazing crowd here on this beautiful spring day for this morning's conversation about building opportunity for all, especially here in Memphis. This morning, we're focusing on how cities can overcome their histories of exclusion, of inequality, and of racism. In other words, how can everyone rise? America produces more wealth than any other country in the world. The economy is growing, and the unemployment rate is at a 30-year low. Memphis is also making economic progress, yet these gains aren't felt equally. The average black worker here makes $15,000 less than the average white worker. Today, we'll talk about these disparities, as well as paths forward. And we'll hear from experts from right here in Memphis, as well as from other cities across the country. The goal is to open dialogue and trade ideas. And we have a great audience for that in the room. There are policy experts, students, leaders in business and nonprofits, and we want to hear from you. So we'll make time for your questions this morning too. After all, I know that all of you in this room care about creating a fairer and more prosperous Memphis, a Memphis that invests in its future while acknowledging its difficult past. And before we begin, I'd like to thank our partners and collaborators, the Shared Prosperity Partnership, an initiative of the Kresge Foundation, the Brookings Institution, the Urban Institute, and Living Cities. And with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Rip Rapson, President and CEO of the Kresge Foundation. So Rip, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Terry Freeman and the National Civil Rights Museum for hosting us today. I've got to tell you, I've been here any number of times in this museum, and it is at once and the same time just breathtaking, heartbreaking, and inspiring. And it's just a privilege and an honor to hold this conversation in such an extraordinary place. And it's also just great to be in Memphis. When you look at the crowd, not just in this room, but downstairs in our overflow rooms, you realize the degree of interest and passion and commitment this community has for the kinds of issues we're going to talk about today. So thank you all for making the time. As Emily noted, the partnership is a collaboration of the Kresge Foundation, the Brookings Institution's Metropolitan Policy Program, the Urban Institute, and Living Cities. It seeks to do three things. First, to engage with cities to understand the most pressing challenges they're facing. Second, to work with local leaders to determine if, where, and how the Shared Prosperity Partnership can provide meaningful support to advanced shared prosperity. And three, to elevate ideas that inform urban practice across the country. The members of the partnership understand clearly that as out-of-towners, we can't prescribe the course of local action. But we believe we can provide a platform to contribute to local efforts, a platform that draws together select community change makers and some of the nation's foremost researchers and policy thinkers in concerted conversation about strategies for attacking critical issues, whether housing displacement, small business formation, community development finance systems, workforce readiness, or so many others. Today's conversation in Memphis takes aim at perhaps the most difficult challenge any city in America faces: how to confront and eliminate enduring racial disparities in virtually all dimensions of urban life: housing, land use, economic development, health, education, employment. Memphis, like so many other cities across the country, has been shaped powerfully by a legacy of structural economic, social, and political barriers to full racial equity and opportunity. And the outgrowth is untenable and unacceptable. Too many residents living in poverty, too few pathways to opportunity, not all residents being in a position to contribute to, shape, and benefit from the city's economic and social dynamism. These challenges will only multiply over time. My colleague, Amy Liu, sitting right here in the front of the Brookings Institution, constantly reminds us that long-standing wealth gaps across race, gender, and class are widening. fueled by evolving technologies, shifting labor markets, changing demographics, and continued racial bias. But Memphis is not alone. Municipal and state leaders across the country are grappling with the very same challenges. The bad news is that they're having to do that, sorry to say, without the active and constructive contributions of the federal government, which has chosen to sit this one out. The good news, however, is that we are witnessing a wellspring of disciplined and effective innovation at the state and local levels, fostering attitudes, policies, and practices that hold promise of promoting inclusive growth in places like Memphis and Minneapolis, in Milwaukee and Fresno, Cleveland and Kansas City, Arlington and Detroit. But promise is not the same as realization. We have no choice but to interrogate with urgency just how to ramp up and accelerate our responses to some really gnarly issues. What are the most viable pathways to dismantling and substituting for the persistent and pervasive racial, economic, and political barriers that so shamefully impede equality and justice for low-income people and people of color? What leadership structures across the various sectors are best suited to respond to these challenges? And how can we draw on their capacities in the right forms and in the right doses to make measurable progress? What problem-solving machinery can we enhance or construct to ensure that community members are fully engaged in reshaping their communities? How will we track our successes, and what forms of accountability will be necessary and effective? The Shared Prosperity Partnership was designed to help communities grapple with these issues. Here in Memphis, the Kresge Foundation has been inspired by residents' eagerness to drive transformation. We have been proud to steadily build on our commitment to this city. Just last week, we announced a new funding initiative aimed at strengthening neighborhoods. Through Kresge Innovative Projects Memphis, we'll provide up to $1.5 million in grant funding to community-based organizations to support projects that reflect the vision and creativity of Memphians. This initiative reflects our belief that resident-led innovation lies at the heart of civic renewal. It is by supporting resident-led projects that reflect community identity, energy, and aspirations that we hope our work will trend in the direction of rebalancing the scales of equity, justice, and opportunity. But we also know that that's not enough. Today, we are pleased, together with the other members of the Shared Prosperity Partnership, to listen, and to listen, and then to listen some more, to understand how we can set our sights against the horizon line of equity and chart our course by the currents of opportunity. That is what animates our work today and beyond. So I look forward to a provocative and productive set of exchanges today. And again, thank you all for making the time to participate.
Thank you, Rip. And before we get rolling, some more practical notes. I again wanted to mention for those of you that are standing around the edges of the room that we do have an overflow room. The live stream is actually in the theater downstairs, so our staffers can direct you there if you'd like a comfortable seat. Another few practical notes. If everyone could silence your cell phones, but keep them close. We'd love you to be a part of the conversation on Twitter. We're at AtlanticLIVE using the hashtag AtlanticOpportunity. And we begin this morning with a conversation about the historical barriers to opportunity in cities. And for that, please welcome Charles McKinney, Chair of Africana Studies and Associate Professor of History at Rhodes College, and Terry Freeman, President of the National Civil Rights Museum. And leading the conversation is journalist Ray Suarez. So take it away, Ray.